Muddled? Does this one sound better? Any better? Nope. Thank you for bearing with us. This is going to be broadcast, and so the sound engineer needs to get the sound stuff right. Whether I can yell loud enough is not necessarily the point. They're trying to get a good audio signal so this can be broadcast across the TVs and recorded for posterity. So please bear with us for just a moment. Is it sounding any better? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Keep talking, he says. Keep talking. 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Test, test, test. Better, louder, louder. We thought we had it. Still hot. Still hot, still hot, still hot. Good? More. Talk. This is as loud as we can talk. Oh, it's down here. I'm sorry. Is this better? More. This gentleman can't see. He's okay. He's okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ooh, they're nodding their head like that sounded better. Clear? Still sounding better. Okay. Are we close enough to kick things off, Mr. Sound Engineer? You think? All right. Very good. If I could have Commissioner Howard and Commissioner Shea come up and kick us off, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Ann Howard. I'm your Travis County Commissioner for Precinct 3, and I'm joined tonight by my colleague Bridget Shea, who's the County Commissioner for Precinct 2. And as you know from living out here, it's rather complicated as to where you live. What city are you in? What county are you in? And so we have a lot of fun together crisscrossing the county and doing good work. Bridget's going to make a welcome, and I'm going to serve as the MC, so I'll save some remarks throughout the evening.
Thank you, Ann, and I really want to acknowledge Ann and her staff, and my staff as well. If actually, all the staff could raise their hands, stand up, so we can all see you, and thank you, because they worked really hard to put this together. This is really timely. I think we all watched the California fires. We all know our area is getting hotter and drier, and this is exactly the kind of thing we need to be doing more of, is pulling people together, talking about what we can do and what resources are available to us. So I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Bridget. And we appoint, as county commissioners, the state law requires that we appoint the volunteer board members, also called commissioners, for each emergency service district that's in our county. And we'll have a welcome from Lonnie Moore, who's one of our volunteers.
I'm not sure. Is this the good microphone? All right, good. I'm Lonnie Moore. I'm one of the commissioners for Travis County Emergency Services District number 14, better known as the Valenti Fire Department. And I'm one of 5 commissioners, and we're one of several emergency services districts that are here tonight helping to put this together. Emergency Services District number 4, I want to thank Dave Bailey, did a great job on getting this whole thing going. Emergency Services District number 6 is also here representing the Lake Travis Fire and Rescue. Some of you know them by that name. So we work directly with Austin Fire Department and all the Travis County departments that are going to be represented here tonight to provide emergency services coverage throughout the county. So while, as the commissioner noted, it's good to know exactly where you are and which district you might be in, or if you're in the corporate city limits. When you call 911, you don't have to worry about it. You call 911, we have full automatic aid among all the departments. We all support each other. You're going to get service to that address. So it's good to know, and there's actually a couple of maps around showing the boundaries, but you don't have to know it. Now, I have the duty of telling everybody where the bathrooms are. Okay, that's part of the automatic aid that I participate in. Just outside the doors here, going this way, towards the right. We also have coffee, water, all kinds of goodies, cookies, loaf cakes, etc. And there is a sign-in list. I don't know if we're going to pass it around, but it's in the back. That's probably, so if you didn't sign in when you came in, make sure you do sign in. Give us your email address. We can keep you informed of any updates. We have a jam-packed schedule. It's great. There's a lot of subject matter experts on either side of me here. There are going to be opportunities for questions and public input, so I invite you to participate, and we'll try to keep focused. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I now want to welcome Chief Bailey, who is the ESD4 chief, and he is going to tell us about how the evening's going to flow. And we thank you for your leadership, sir, in putting this all together.
My pleasure. Thank you all for being here. Last 3 bullet points talk about introduction to the theme, introductions to our outline, group levels, and introduction to our panelists that we'll get to here in a little bit. I'm David Bailey. I'm the District Administrator for ESD4. Again, thank you for coming out here tonight. This aims to serve really the northwest corner of Travis County. Multiple districts, multiple HOAs, POAs, multiple communities. So again, thank you for being here. Next slide, if I could. Our theme centers around this slide, and you're going to see this idea a bunch tonight, that in the world of wildfire preparedness, you can easily break it down into 3 areas of focus. The individual homeowner, his roles and responsibilities, the HOA neighborhood, POA level of work that they're doing, and then beyond that, BCP, public lands, large preserves and parks. Each one of these has kind of unique challenges. We speak the same language. A lot of times you'll hear the same terminology, but the focus and the challenges are unique within each one of those levels, we're going to call them tonight. Our goal for tonight is to identify actions within each level. So we're going to try to stay focused a level at a time, and then we'll move to the next level. To identify resources within each. If you're working at one level, you may not have access to all the resources that will be talked about. But if you're working really hard at that level, we want to identify within that level who's doing what and how you get in touch with them. The last one, of course, is to make connections. If there's any question about who you should be talking to about this issue, that's one of our big goals. All right, enough about us. Let me ask you this. In the audience, is anybody here, this is your first wildfire prevention meeting ever? A couple of you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. A lot of us in this room feel like we've talked about this conversation for a long time. And so tonight we've got 3 different things. We've got the what we need you to do, what's happening, what's going on. But then we've also got the who and the how. So tonight is going to be heavily, heavily focused on who and how. Who does that? How do I get their help? How do they do it? At whatever level I'm working at. We're going to tell you what's going on. We're also going to focus on who and how is happening. Okay, if we could, next slide. All right, for example, I've got a map here that kind of illustrates the point. The red lines, and sorry if you can't see it, is it visible enough? Okay. Within the red line is a neighborhood of 300 homes, individual property owners that have all kinds of responsibilities and roles and tasks that they can do. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what that level works at. Beyond that, you've got an HOA green space, common space, shared space that the HOA owns. It's not public land, it's private land. And then beyond that, we've got BCP at either the Travis County level or the City of Austin level. And again, that's Balcones Canyonland Preserves. Lots of activities are happening at each level. Tonight, we want to identify who's playing in that level, who is participating and working at that, and how you get in touch with them for your question at that level, if you will. All right, one more slide. All right, and within that, our panelists are broke down within those topics. We start, and frankly, the conversation starts and ends at the homeowner level. What you as a private homeowner need to be doing and need to know. And then we will go through some of the other folks. But to kick that conversation off, we've got 3 gentlemen right here. They're going to present for 10, 12 minutes on responsibilities, duties, challenges within their level. All right, and then have a little question and answer within each of the levels, and then we'll go to the next level. All right, so for now, Jason Estrella, Chris Dribble, and Rob Zimmerman. Please come up, Chiefs. I'll let you guys talk. These are your subject matter experts at the homeowner level.
Thank you, Chief. So I'm your wildfire mitigation specialist for Travis County Fire Marshal's Office. I've been a wildland firefighter for several years now, and it's one of the takeaways I have in that time is that wildfire instills a lot of questions, instills a lot of concerns, instills a lot of fear in people. My brother was a Houston police officer for quite a while. And when I told him I was going to be a firefighter, he looked at me and said, "Are you nuts? That's so dangerous." You're a Houston cop, but okay. But to understand wildfire, you look at different variables, right? You look at topography, we look at weather, we look at fuels. And it's important to think of your home as fuel. Next slide, please. So here's a couple of bullet points that I pulled. Various research from across various medium. 80% of homes destroyed in a wildfire could have been saved with proper home hardening. Having a lawn and non-combustible roof provides 85% survivability. 90% of homes that burn in a WUI fire wildland-urban interface ignite from embers, some of which can travel up to 1.5 miles from the source. So what's kind of the common factor here? It's the home in this situation. Home is the fuel. So what do we talk about when we think of home hardening? We're basically talking about protecting your home against an emergency event. In this context, wildfire. Next slide, please. So what can you do to protect your home in a wildfire? You can get this information all over the internet under different sources, but they all basically focus on the same general 5 things. So I pulled this from IBHS, Institute for Business and Home Safety. And the 5 things that you can do in preparation for a wildfire to harden your home are looking at your roof, your vents, your decks, siding, and your 0 to 5 foot zone around the house. So when we talk about roof, we're talking about having a non-combustible roof. We're talking about if you have gutters, clean your gutters regularly. Those leaves and the debris that gather inside that's an ember trap right there. Embers can, from 1.5 miles away, can land inside of that gutter with some leaves and stuff in there. Starts to build up, you don't even know it, gets inside your house, and that's what ignites your home. You can also look at under your eaves, trying to install non-combustible soffit under there. Then you look at your vents on the exterior of your home. And what is recommended is installing 1/8 inch metal mesh over your vents. 1/8 inch, thank you, Chris. 1/8 inch is kind of the max size. It's what shows to prevent your ignitable embers from getting into your attic space and still allow for airflow. You'd be surprised how many wild house fires that ignite in a wildland incident actually happen basically from the inside. Then you have your decks. We look at your decks. That does not mean get rid of your wooden decks, of course, but you can take steps to prep them in the event of a wildfire. So these are things like cleaning up the leaves and debris that gather around your steps and the columns, removing stuff that we keep under our decks. I know I've been guilty about storing my lawnmower underneath there before. Your lawn furniture, your patio furniture that you keep up there, removing those cushions, removing the mats, the door mats that go into your door. Removing all of that stuff and taking it out of the environment in preparation, all that stuff, again, is ember catch. It's just waiting to ignite. Then we look at siding, the exterior siding of your home, trying to have non-combustible siding for your home. May not always be possible, but what's some other steps you can do in preparation to protect the side of your home against wildfire, even if you don't have non-combustible siding. So things like ensuring there's about 6 inches of space between the ground and the bottom of your siding, so that if something lands, embers land there at the base, they don't quite travel up. And that leads to the 0 to 5 foot zone. That means 5 feet out from the exterior of your home out to 5 feet. So what can you do in that area? We're talking about removing flammable vegetation. Now, we still want you to enjoy your home. We still want you to have pretty landscape. But what can you do is maybe trying to find some non-combustible plants, maybe some of your succulents, things like that you can keep around there that are not as readily ignitable. A lot of us like to try to put mulch around the house. You know, that too can be fuel. So maybe you replace that with something non-combustible like rocks, pebbles, things like that. Making sure your trees are trimmed, not overhanging on your roof. So there's a lot of different things you can do in that 0 to 5 foot. It's really all about looking at everything as kind of thinking about it as fuel. What can catch an ember? What can ignite and potentially damage your home? Some of those bushes and plants we like to keep around our windows, those things ignite, fire starts. If your window is not, say, double pane or, multi-pane, that fire heats that window up, blows it out, and now fire gets inside of your house. So IBHS basically says you work at these 5 things, and the chances of your home surviving a wildfire greatly, greatly increase. It's never 100%, but it does give you a higher chance of your home for survivability. Anything y'all want to add on that?
You've done a great job. I think I think there's a misconception that a hardened home is going to be scorched earth out to 300 feet from the home. And it's simply not the case. A lot of it, we found, is just basic maintenance, whether it's a coat of paint over bare wood, whether it's caulking gaps. But when we come out and look and do a fire-wise assessment or a size or a his or whatever term we're using, we're all after the same thing. We're looking at it as a fire ember, looking at your house and trying to find the vulnerabilities. And a lot of that is just simple maintenance. It takes some sweat equity without a doubt, but it's simple things that can really reduce the risk of a wildfire or an ember moving into your structure. It's basically everybody's largest investment, right? Is your house. A lot of memories there. I mean, it's where you live, it's where you raise your family. So you want to do everything you can to reduce that risk. And there's a lot of simple things that we can do to be able to do that.
So that leads to the challenges of being able to harden your home. One of them is DIY. You got to do it yourself. Or maybe you're not everyone's a handy person with some of these things. So that can be a challenge. The cost. Now, those 5 things, maybe aside from siding, and the roof component, if you're not already having a non-combustible roof, IBHS basically says around $500 worth of maintenance on average in general can really keep your home prepped up for that wildfire event. Time. How many of us have the time to do a lot of these things? There's 24 hours in a day, and I feel like I use 25 of them. And the age of the home. That in itself can also be a challenge. If you have an older home, trying to get all of that new material put in, it takes cost, it takes time, it takes effort. So these are, in fact, some of the challenges. But even some of the littler things that you can do, that's not always the roof, that's not always the siding, will still increase the survivability of the home during a wildfire event. Next slide, please. So as Chief said, we have size, HIZ, home risk assessment. What does that mean? How do I get one? So no matter what you call it out of those 3 things, basically what it is someone will come out to your home, do a walk around, be able to point out here are some changes to make, here are some vulnerabilities, here's what's working, and just kind of follow up with you on that report about what you can do to help protect your home better. So how to request an assessment, many different ways to do so. One, you can contact me at the Fire Marshal's office. There's my email address. You can contact Chief Zimmerman here at ESD 14. They do them as well if you're in his district. And, of course, AFD, the Austin Fire Department, they have a whole wildfire hub and multiple different ways to request an HIZ or a home risk assessment. Now, even, if you go through AFD and your home is outside in the unconsolidated areas of the county, we all communicate and work together. Whoever gets that assessment will get that request to the right person. They'll get it to the right ESD. Someone will contact you. Someone will get out there as soon as possible. So no matter how you come about trying to request it, the right person will get to it. So just be aware of that. So all this information that I've given, it's all available online. It's IBHS, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. You can go to the Texas A&M Forest Service website. You can go to the National Fire Protection Association website and the wildfirerisk.org. Again, a lot of this information is out there. You can get into more detail with reading it, but it is there. A simple Google search will lead you to a lot of different places and probably a lot of different rabbit holes to crawl into your reading. So we say all of this to say one thing. You owe your family, your neighbors, your HOA, fire service, and yourself some level of community engagement and responsibility. But rest assured, they also owe it to you. So with that, if we have time, we'll take a few questions.
I'm going to help out with the questions here. I wanted to pose a couple of things to the group. On the back tables, we have some information that includes write-ups about the defensible space around your home, and it really lays out what these guys have been talking to us about tonight. I think we'll also hear a little bit more about like the FireWise community, the work that you can do as a community, or the Ready, Set, Go program. You know, we're all, as you've ended with, responsible for taking care of our own property. And I was wondering if you guys have seen any good practices if you have a neighbor whose home is messy. And, you know, they've got gas cans at the bottom of the wood siding, and they're always having campfires during a burn ban. What should they do?
Shame. Shame works pretty well. No, the reality, when we come out and do a home assessment for wildfire, we really encourage, invite your neighbors, because the first thing that catches homes on fire is the embers. The second is home-to-home or structure-to-structure ignition. So you may fully protect your home, but if your neighbor's house burns and it's 10, 15 feet from yours, well, it's likely it's still going to catch your house on fire.
And you share a wooden fence.
And then if you share a wooden fence, which acts like a wick, all right, that is also a problem. So as we'll transition into the next part of the program, into that what you can do as an HOA, it starts out at the home, the neighbors, so that's 3 people, then 6 and 8, and they tell 2 people, and they tell 2 people, and next thing you know it, you're a FireWise community. And that's really just sharing the information. When we come out and do the ignition zone assessment, it's partly giving you advice on how you can do things to your home, but the other piece is to understand how wildfire works, the fuels, weather, topography, how the slope and topography around your home affects how fire could potentially happen. So,
All right, questions?
Yes, you had the roof as one of the primary. You had the roof as one of the primary first things, but haven't seen any recommendations. Would a sprinkler attached to the top of the roof line? I've seen it in the California fires. Somebody had a sprinkler that they had mounted on top of the roof. Would that be an effective deterrent during a fire to have the roof sprayed down by a sprinkler on there? And the other thing I'd recommend, I'm on a board in the HOA trying to get people to recognize fires. Can you have some videos showing, in the case of the drains on the top, the eaves, if an ember fell in there, how fast it would ignite, or if it fell on a roof? I mean, something that people can relate to. I put out each board meeting the FireWise recommendations, but it doesn't catch a lot of people's attention, and so they need a short video. I had asked the fire marshal before to come out, and he says, well, 4 times the height of the vegetation on the bottom that would catch. But if you had some videos showing this, it would make it easier to communicate to the neighborhood, the real danger, because it's hard when people love their trees and vegetation to see how it would happen. Anyway.
So all good questions. I'll address each one of those. First of all, if you're from an HOA, you have an interest in maybe wanting to follow up with some more meetings, outreach type stuff, we have the Travis County Fire Marshal's Office has a new public education outreach coordinator, Annalisa. She's back there at that table. So when you get a chance, please feel free to go up there and say hi. So videos, we'll talk about that real quick. The IBHS website, they do conduct a lot of research when it comes to embers, ignitability of a home. They have a really good amount of videos that shows just what you're asking for. And they're not long videos, but they're definitely very telling videos. So you can get that. They're on YouTube from IBHS website, their YouTube channel, I believe, as well. So yes, that stuff is out there, easy to get to, and it can tell you a lot. If you want to.
So as far as the sprinkler question, from our standpoint, it's not going to help a lot, and this is why. Typically, if we're having that kind of event, it's very dry. The humidity is already going to be in the low 30s, 20s, maybe even the teens. So the water that you're going to put on that roof on a 100-degree day is going to evaporate awfully quick. Also, depending on where the water comes from, it may be robbing water that could be utilized elsewhere in firefighting efforts. And then the other piece of it is the thing that you're watering is a typically Class A non-combustible roof. It's not the thing that's going to catch. It's the leaves in the gutter. It's the soffits. It's the 5 things that we talked about. So there are instances where that could have helped, but by and large, the statistics that we have followed and looked at just really, it doesn't bear fruit. The other piece of it is if you lose power or you lose water, if you're depending on that one thing to prevent your home from catching fire, now you're sunk. Whereas the other things that we're talking about of hardening your home, reducing your fuel load, they work every time, whether there's power, whether there's water, or anything. Did that answer your question?
We have another comment here.
My name is Dustin Dunn. I'm the wildfire mitigation specialist for Lake Travis Fire Rescue. I just wanted to add that the mitigation recommendations of home hardening and defensible space are all passive systems that don't require any of the parts and pieces to come together to make a whole sprinkler system work in that case. So that those passive systems are going to be potentially far more effective, and they don't even require you to be around to have any effect on those. And I also wanted to add that the Texas A&M Forest Service did a report of the Palmer Lane fire that happened a couple years ago. It's a sort of ArcGIS storyboard page that they have that goes through the whole timeline of how that fire happened and how it destroyed a apartment building by embers getting into the roof or through the E-vents into the attic space. So could provide some of that as well.
Question here in the back. She's bringing you a mic so we can get you on TV.
Hi. So, Saranj and Joyce, hi. Is there such thing as a sprayable treatment or paint that you could spray on the inside of your attic? So when the embers come in, they can't ignite the wood. Same thing for the fences.
I've never heard of that. Now, there are retardants that people spray on, like the outsides and on the wooden fences. Spraying on the inside of the attic, that's a first. The problem also is the other things that we put in our attics. Typically, if it's like my attic, it's full of cardboard boxes and things that are, So I don't know. Honestly, I'll be honest, I've never heard that, and I don't know that it's, the best defense is to keep the embers out of the attic in the first place. And that's fairly easy with the 1/8" wire mesh on your soffit vents and your gable end vents. So I don't have the exact answer, but I think you can see the direction we're headed.
All right, let's take another question, and then we might move to the next level if we're good, and then we can come back at the end to some more questions.
Check, check. Can you hear me? I have a question about concrete or clay tile roofs, because I have a concrete tile roof, and it seems like there's a lot of places where embers could get in. Can anybody speak to the that type of construction?
Your turn.
I lived for a while in the Phoenix area, and I had clay tile roof. And you're right, there's a lot of gaps in there. I've seen people that we have gone and done Firewise assessments for where they will fill in that lower gap or right at where the gutter edge is to help prevent that. There's a lot of vulnerability. Fortunately, we've moved past thatch roofs, right? And we've not too many people living in tiki huts anymore. So fortunately, modern construction has helped move us on to a little bit more of a fire-resistant roof construction.
When an ember, kind of gets sucked into the house, usually there's kind of an airflow going through there, right? That's where we're talking about the end vents and stuff. In a roof like that, the little gaps between the shingles, does that tend to draw in air in any way where an ember would want to kind of get in there? Or is that as much of a concern?
I think, depending upon where the fire front is, that they create their own weather, and there can be some significant gusts where it could impact. An ember could get under there, yeah.
If you have a tile roof, you should have bird stops.
Right.
Exactly. And that's an important thing. We do fire inspections, and you'll see where something has happened and one's broken or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to tell a resident to check their bird stops,
And to make sure,
that really reduces embers going.
and make sure that it's a material that's not combustible, because a lot of times in the ridge vents that we have on a lot of the ridges along the homes, there'll be a foam lets air in, but it keeps the critters and things out. Well, the foam is petroleum based, so embers can catch it on fire. So the same would continue in those void spaces. Make sure the thing that you're putting in there is non-combustible. Okay, and is that Thank you.
All right, we have a lot of knowledgeable neighbors, so that is another resource for each of us, is to find these guys who talk up and ask them to help. Thank you. Let's give a hand for our first panel. We're going to welcome back to the microphones David Bailey. I call him Chief David Bailey. His ESD is a little different than the others. We can talk about that later. And our own Dustin Dunn, who's serving as the Wildlife Coalition leader for the whole county now? Or yes, thank you, Dustin. And your level is the HOAs and property owner associations?
Neighborhood levels, HOAs, POAs, just neighborhoods in general level. I have a third person, Paul Shreve, who is a POA president or a Firewise leader in his neighborhood that has a lot of experience. So at the end of the evening, there's going to be times to meet and greet, ask all those other questions that we can't get to. Pick out Paul because he's got a lot of good experience about that. Transitioning to the HOA, POA level, if you will. Next slide. Okay, there's some differences at this level. Roles and responsibilities. Number one, you need to support if you've got a commitment to a Firewise community. To clarify, your POA board is not necessarily your Firewise committee, correct? There's plenty of HOA boards, POA boards that's doing great work, but they don't have a Firewise designation.
What is Firewise? I got to interrupt you. What is Firewise?
Firewise is a national program created by NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. They are largely responsible for most of the building and fire codes here in the United States, and it's really intended to be a framework that can be applied to any community to help give them structure to get some of this work done.
And once they have documented the efforts that they have done, they are recognized and awarded as a FireWise community. So it gives them a plan, a list of things as a community that they can work towards to get that designation. So a POA, HOA board needs to support that. If you've got another group of people in your neighborhood, then you support that through things like your infrastructure of meeting notices or meeting spaces. I know they're separate entities, but if they're at odds with each other, they're not going to work. So support your FireWise community. Support the individual homeowner. There are plenty of communities that don't have FireWise, and there's plenty of standalone homeowners that don't have a POA. That's why we started with the home over level. If you have done that, and the good news is you've got everybody to do home assessment, home ignition zone, and you're good there, the next level is HOA, POA. The third level, or third bullet, is fuel mitigation in common spaces like green belts and your parks and your amenity spaces. It's shared by your whole HOA and POA. That comes to us in different ways and different looks. The question today is how do we work through that? Again, not necessarily the what, it's fuel mitigation. We know what the what is. The question is who and how. In your neighborhood, who and how is going to handle this? We're also going to talk about some challenges of that, mostly ownership and approvals. Who gives the permission to go do fuel mitigation in that common area? What legalities are there? The scope of work. Who decides which tree gets cut and which tree does not get cut? Scope of work. When you're dealing at this level, at a HOA level, then those are the topics we need to talk about this evening. And then and to do this, I'm going to share with you 3 case studies. Tell you 3 stories, and that will generate the questions that will come forward. Next slide. All right, we're going to start with a pretty simple one. This is a neighborhood off City Park Road. 2 POAs, functioning, thriving organizations are split by this space here. That's Turkey Creek. That parcel in the middle is owned by the POA. It's a 12-acre lot. It has not been deeded to Travis County or the City of Austin as a preserve. It is indeed private property. It is totally chock full with dead cedar trees. From the past 2 or 3 freezes that we've had, we've got these huge piles of debris everywhere. Okay? That's the situation. So on the left, I'm going to keep coming back to these 3. I'm sorry if you can't see it over there. Who and how? The first question I have is who are they asking help of? Your HOA, if they have this situation, who can they get to help them with this? If they go to Travis County, the fire marshal is going to say, it's private property. Exactly right. City of Austin, you're not in our jurisdiction. You're out in the county. I can't help with that. It's private property. So who is asking becomes an important thing, and who are they asking it of? In our situation, they need to come to the ESD. You need to go to your ESD or your local fire department. If you're not in the City of Austin, it's an ESD's fire department. They can provide a lot of resources. A lot of times you as a HOA board may not understand. Like the second bullet, methods. How are you going to clear that? There's actually 3 ways to clear that green belt. You can pull a trailer in there and haul it off. You can bring a chipper in or a shredder and chip it right there. Or I guess you could burn it. All 3 are legal. All right? And that question comes. So the board comes to us and says, we've asked everybody and nobody can help us. ESD Fire Department, how do I take care of this 12-acre lot that's full of dead and dying? Average age in those neighborhoods are 72 years old. The days of chainsaw parties are well past. Yeah. Sounded great. But the other thing, liabilities. If we have that party, who's going to pay when someone chops their foot off with a chainsaw? Who does that? And if the HOA contracts with somebody, again, there's liabilities about do they have authority to contract with those people to do that, to bring them in or not. So big questions happen in that regard. The third one is MOUs and contracts. Whether it's a private vendor or another agency, those things have to be written down in pretty firm legal answers. ESD4 will help you with some of this, but it has to be very clear. I have to have a request, a very specific request, and not from the FireWise community. I have to have from the POA board because they have legal authority to let me work on their dirt. If I come into your green belt and start telling you what to do, you very rightly will say, get out of here. This is private property. So most of the time, an agency, any agency, is going to ask for a specific request from the HOA to the ESD saying, man, this scares me to death. Help me with this. Okay? The ESD then can come up with methodologies. If you want my opinion, this is how you should do it. You should hire crews to come in here with chippers and shredders and chip it all up, or whatever the appropriate methodology is. But the board now is armed with a professional subject matter expert's scope of work and plan. All right? That's pretty critical as you're talking about protecting your board with whatever decision you make. Okay? Case study number 2. Slightly different world, but same questions, same issues. This is Mr. Shreve's community down here. He's got a similar thing. He's got Hogpen Creek that runs all the way down into Lake Austin, deep ravine full of dead and dying vegetation. He's got it just as bad as the other one did. The difference is on his other side, on 3 sides, he's surrounded by Emma Long Park, City of Austin, BCP land. Okay? He comes to us with a request. I need help with this. This is scaring us all to death. The neighbors on the top of these ravines have concerns, and so they're looking for how we do it. Again, it is community property. It hasn't been deeded to someone else. These other plans, and a lot of plans in the BCP, were sold by your HOA to the BCP as conservation efforts. And so that's why they manage them and why they take care of them. In this regard, your POA said, no, we're going to keep it. Oh, I missed one thing. Go back one slide if you could. Green belts with a question mark and an asterisk and an exclamation point. They're scared to death that it's going to be turned into a green belt. And people are going to be walking through their property, like Zilker Park. So, just that word, as sometimes was a big sticking point. The POA has to be able to communicate what they're really after here. What they're after is the dead and dying stuff that they need some help with. I'm sorry, going forward. Back to this one. Okay, so the same thing. Who asked the question, and who are they asking it of? If the POA went to the City of Austin and said, hey, man, this fence line scares me. Clear those brush. What would the answer be? Well, it is public property, but they would also tell you, look, there's a plan. We're doing fuel mitigation in these parks. County and city, they've got all kinds of resources doing fuel mitigation projects within them. They're 10-year plans. They're 6-year plans. I can't immediately tell this person when they're coming next. Now, they can ask the ESD for help down here, and in fact, they did. The ESD then could go in a slightly different route. I could go to the City of Austin and say, hey, when do you think you'll get to those streets? When do you think that'll happen? Now, part of the question when I'm asking that is they'll want to know who's doing the work. Down here, I might be hiring a private company. Within the city, within Travis County BCP lands, they're very specific about the scope of work. Who is doing the work? Who is cutting what tree, when? And I mean, that's their job to do that. So how do you get away from that or around that or work within it? You use their vendors and you use their plan. And you don't reinvent the wheel. You just say, hey, if I'm willing to support this, can these areas get to the top of the list a little faster? That's what that looks like. But you're not fighting it because, again, they've got a plan. They do this for a living. They know what they're doing to manage the fuel in a BCP property. How do we help them? And again, the ESD got in that conversation and worked with the City of Austin to get those fence lines done. That's almost 1.5 miles of 60-foot buffer line from those. And why did I do them? They're my citizens. They're in ESD 4. That's why. We'll talk about that more later. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Those are shaded fuel breaks. We talked a little bit that. We'll talk about some more. That's the work we did in the private green belt. Each one of those yellow spots, that's about 6 acres worth of shaded fuel breaks. And it's the spots, number one, we could get to. Number two, we could protect the neighbors behind it. But again, it was all privately owned, and the president of the HOA said, yes, you have permission to do it. You have permission to do it under these conditions, under this scope. You have access here and here, but you don't have access there. All in a contract, all in an MOU, all our T's dotted and liabilities in place.
What is a shaded fuel break?
Shaded fuel breaks. BCP is going to talk about that here in a little bit. most of, especially for the new folks, a shaded fuel break is a way to reduce the volume of fuel while still leaving a canopy in the trees and still having a shaded forest. You're still preserving and protecting the woodlands. But what you've done is you've removed all the, they call them ladder fuels, all the litter on the ground. What we don't want is a fire screaming through the canopy, through the roofs. I'd love to have a fire crawling along on the ground. And so if the only thing on the ground is dirt and twigs and that fire starts, the fire department has a chance. And so a shaded fuel break is a way to hopefully lessen the ferocity of that fire as it crawls through the ground and does not get up in the canopy. That's a shaded fuel break. Okay? That's one of the methodologies. That's one of the fuel treatments, they call them. We're going to treat these areas. How are we going to do it? Well, I'm not going to clear cut it. I'm going to build a shaded fuel break instead. Make sense? Good question. Third slide. Another piece of property. I've got 2 mobile homes and 2 businesses, and they just happen to border a Travis County property. County owns this property. And that's as thick and woolly as a place you'll ever want to know. It's plain scary. And there was a fire there a couple of years ago. That mobile home park called and said, hey, I got a problem. This scares me to death. No, we don't. I mean, we can't do this. We can't afford to do it ourselves. And we don't own the property. Travis County owns the property. So you go to Travis County, and sure enough, they've got a plan. Travis County's got a plan for all their parks. We're going to get to that. We're going to take care of that fuel mitigation, but I don't know necessarily how far down the road it's going to be. And they only have X amount of dollars every year. And once they exhaust those dollars, they're pretty much tapped out unless another source is able to help. Okay. So in this case, we partnered with Travis County fuel mitigation folks. We also partnered with Dustin Dunn and ESD6. ESD6 has their own fuel crew. I talked earlier about qualifications. Not just anybody with a chainsaw ought to be doing your work. ESD6 has kind of solved that problem in a unique way. If you want to talk about y'all's efforts.
Sure. So after the 2011 wildfires, we created our fuels mitigation program. We are an at-cost program, so we do charge a fee for our service. But we do our work throughout the entire county, as this is on the east side of the county. We're really just trying to help get fuels mitigation done as much as possible.
And many times there's people that want to do fuel treatment, fuel mitigation, but the resource isn't out there. There's not qualified teams, qualified crews that we will accept to go do that work. ESD6 built their own crew that is qualified to work in just about any area in Travis County. I didn't have to convince them they're safe, they're usable. They said, yeah, we know them. They can come on and use them. Another neat thing about this project was I mentioned that there is a third way you can burn this. They cut for about 3 weeks, piled it up into small individual piles. 4 months later, they came back and it was dried and they burned it right there. It was the cheapest way to get rid of it. It also gave their crews practice at wildland firefighting and controlling fires and all. It is manageable. It is doable. And it was a way to demonstrate the model does work if you've got trained crews that you're willing to apply to the problem. Okay. Next slide. One last bit here. I don't know if you've seen this. This is a map of the ESDs in Travis County, emergency service districts. When I tell you to call your local fire department, really it's an ESD that is running this fire department. Okay, and so your request, hey ESD, I need help, is approved or not approved by the ESD itself, the commissioners, if you will. There's 14 in Travis County. I promise you, if you're out in the county, you live in one. And it's not necessarily the city of Austin. And everybody's got a esdnumber.org email. There's plenty to find if you haven't found them out there. Just this last year, in fiscal 2025, we've done 10 neighborhoods, 27 acres of treatments. Most of that shaded fuel breaks. Again, reducing the fuel load to give firefighters and the homes a chance should a fire come crawling through there. That's the purpose of a shaded fuel break. 3.45 miles of protection. That's just within ESD4, and we're not a big ESD. But we did welcome a POA and HOA calling us and saying, man, how do I fix this? How do I do this? And we supported that. Okay, questions? Yes, ma'am. one of the huge questions about fuel treatment of any kind is, that's great, you're taking the fuel out, but the tree's going to grow back. In 5 years, Bailey, you're going to have to do this again. Yeah. So the short answer to that is, when we work with a homeowner association, we're trying very much to give them an example of best case practice. I rarely can do it all in 1 year. I can give you a start. I can show you what you should be doing. This plan that I wrote for this year, you can apply next year and next year, because they're multi-year plans that we put out there, just because of the cost and the effort to do even one season's worth. Other questions?
I would just add to that the maintenance is far easier and far cheaper than those initial installations, typically requiring lots of manual labor with chainsaws and dragging all of that brush, whereas the maintenance, a lot of times you can do it with just a lawnmower, for example.
And most of the HOAs go into this with that. They want an example. They want someone to help them, knowing that in the future they go on. Yes, sir.
So you've got some colored areas up here that are not labeled. What's that green area?
Right here?
Sorry, what's that green area there that's not labeled, and what's the white cross-hatched area?
Okay, so the green is all ESD 6, Lakeway ESD 6.
Okay, but there's a label next to it in a different color that says ESD 6.
Oh, yeah. I'll give you a better story of that. The gold one's ESD 4.
Okay.
Has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 islands. You know why? Because when we were built, we totally had a horseshoe all the way around the city of Austin. And annexation cut through there and left me 6 islands behind. ESD 6 at one time had all of this until the city of Austin said, I want that. So ESD 6 still has this in their territory. So the white hatch is city of Austin.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Yes, sir.
Do you interact with the mud?
I've not been approached by a mud district, no. No. Are they, that'd be a good question. If they came to me, so who would be coming to me? The HOA saying, hey, this mud scares me? Yeah. Yeah. Are you having much access talking to the mud?
I was the first person to ever walk in a mud district meeting who was not a member of the mud. So we got their attention very quickly, but attention and cash.
I will say sometimes the uniform gets access that otherwise was not available.
I was such a shock to them. Even the uniform would have been over.
Gotcha. Yes, sir.
What's the estimated cost per acre to do a shaded fuel break, and who pays for that? I mean, did the county pay for that, or did the HOA? I had a bid for our 3 acres, and I'm just curious.
So it all varies. Each vendor prices it a little bit different. Some vendors say, I'm going to give you a 60-foot wide buffer zone, and I'll price it per linear foot.
Per acre?
$2 per linear.
Per acre.
I don't know, man. If you had to do a shaded fuel break through the whole acre, 20 grand, 25, 30 grand.
That's about right. That's about right. And then on the liability thing, I contacted our insurance, and I got a workman's comp for the HOA, like $300 or $400 a year for volunteer services. Are volunteers adequate to do fuel breaks?
With assistance, I would say. It would be best to have very experienced folks there assisting, making sure
Guiding.
that everything is safe. Yes.
Can we get
Providing
somebody,
training.
like if we were going to get some volunteers, and who would we contact to get one person to come out and adjust? I mean, Will Bitmore came out years ago and walked through and kind of told me what we had to do, but
I'm going to throw every ESD under the bus. You go to the ESD.
Go to
you
the
go to that
ESD?
fire chief, and you say, I need some help. He's a paid professional to give you ideas. Doesn't mean he can necessarily pay for it or solve it, but he should be your first person to, hey, how do I help me with this?
okay.
Here's
Sorry, chiefs.
lots. Keep moving right here.
Yes, sir.
What's the height of the rate of canopy before a shaded fire break?
6 to 8 feet. So you don't need to be falling above that. Yes, sir. And then I'll-
What, how much interaction do you have with CRA? They got their finger on
None, because none of my district borders an LCRA property. And that does come back to...
The answer's none.
The
Other
answer's none.
ESDs
Yeah.
do work closely with LCRA. Can you talk about that?
So I know that LCRA has a fairly aggressive land management program where they are actually using prescribed fire as well. It's probably a similar type of situation to what we were talking about earlier with the City of Austin's 10-year plan, that they probably have something similar to that where maybe they're not getting to it immediately, but it's on the list.
One final thought, and then we're going to change page to the next one. Also, at the end of this, we're going to throw this open for lots of other questions. So as we get through the third segment, if we don't get your question, I promise there'll be opportunity afterwards. The last thing is, why should an ESD do this? Why does an ESD get involved to this? And our answer is pretty simple, is every fire department out there also has a risk reduction mission, has a prevention mission. Yes, they respond to your emergencies, but they also have a prevention mission. Some of them have full-fledged prevention divisions. If I had chemicals in my district, I'd have a full hazmat team doing inspections and all those kind of things. I don't. I have wildfire is my biggest risk to my citizens in this area. That's why we can get involved and use your resources, because we're using your tax dollars to pay for some of this. It's because we're also tasked with risk reduction within our districts.
I want to add right here that Bridget and I love to hear from our constituents. So if you live with a green belt behind you and you're worried about what you see, let us know, because it's our job to be your liaison to all these plans, whether it's the city or the county or any other jurisdiction, and we can make sure that some professionals go take a look to see what that risk is. We've confused a lot of residents over the years by thinking like any tree near my house is bad. Well, that's not what don't take that from what you're hearing tonight. And not every tree in the green belt that has a dead limb is, a threat. But after these storms, things change, nature happens. So if you have a question or a concern, ask somebody, and we'll make sure that, a professional takes a look at it. All right. Travis County, Ann Howard, Bridget Shea were the most popular two girls in town. We'll share that. Okay.
Can I just make one
please.
quick note? I just want to make one quick final plea to see how this is very much a community problem and needs to be done as a community to effectively solve the problem, and that maybe shame can work to get your neighbors to participate, but hey, maybe being a good neighbor would also help too. Bring them a plate of cookies or something, and offer them assistance in solving the problem, and vice versa. I think that we need to be a community to solve this problem, so let's try.
Thank you. So the last level we're going to talk about is what makes sort of living in Austin, Travis County special. It's our parks, our green space, the protected and preserved land. Bridget and I have taken some hard votes during budgeting time over the last couple of years to increase the county budget for parks and wildland management to make sure that we are doubling down on keeping things safe. We've even applied for a grant together to try to draw down more money from the Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, that could allow us to have more capacity on some of these public, government-owned lands, as well as helping private landowners do some of this work. So we'll hope we'll get that grant, and we'll share that when we do. But let's go to these next guys. We have Jeremy Hull, Justin Bates, and David Bailey. And I don't know this guy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Bates. I'm the division manager for the Wildland Conservation Division with Austin Water. So all told, Austin Water manages 49,000 acres of protected land that stretch from effectively Cedar Park all the way down into Hayes County. If you go to the next slide. Okay, so easiest question of the night. Who moved out to this part of Austin Travis County for the parking lots, roads, closely packed houses? Not a lot of hands. Who moved out here for the open space, for the views, for the lake access, for the clean air, the dark skies? We are so lucky here in Austin that for over 25 years, us and our neighbors have voted time and time again to put money aside and protect the landscapes, the places, the views, the plants, the animals that make Austin really unique and really special. I like to say, a lot of people don't know, Texas is the second most biodiverse state in the country. And right here in the heart of Texas, we are the crossroads of a bunch of different ecosystems. So we have species, we have landscapes that you don't find anywhere else in the world. It's a really special place, and we've done an incredible job as a community building protections for these special places. So Austin, with Austin Water, we manage the city's portion of the Balcones Canyonlands Preserve, which is land that might be right in your backyard. We work closely with Travis County. So the Balcones Canyonlands Preserve was part of this effort to protect special places. And as Austin was growing, we were starting to push into some of those unique habitats, pushing up against some of the species that are only found here. And the community came together and put together a grand bargain, worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and were able to work out an incidental take permit, an ability for the county and the city to facilitate development by setting lands aside so that we could continue to grow and build roads, houses, infrastructure. And so today, that network of preserves that you just saw, that's our mitigation for a growing community, and we continue to benefit. So if you go to the next slide, all that land that was set aside facilitates your neighborhood. If you're in a neighborhood that's less than 25 years old, that's in this part of the county, likely it was able to benefit from streamlined Endangered Species Act mitigation through the BCP. Over 1,500 development projects, over 400 infrastructure projects, all spread over 12,000 acres. So we move to these places, we enjoy the views out the window and the ability to get out into those special open spaces, but they also exist so that we could have roads, homes, and all the infrastructure that we need. But as you can imagine, as we grow out into those open spaces, that wildland-urban interface continues to grow. And so as you look out the window, it's easy to see the news, LA fires, fires outside of Fredericksburg, and it's really easy to think, my goodness, is that going to happen here? But even though it looks like it a little bit more every day, you see all those California plates, this is not California. That's the really good news here. This is not California. And if you go to the next slide, back in the early 2000s, we thought that those juniper oak woodlands on our hillsides were very similar to the chaparral that you see in Southern California. But actually, our group at the Balcones Canyonlands Preserve worked with researchers from Baylor who studied and realized that, in fact, we differ in really significant ways. Our weather is different. It's wetter. It's not as windy. And our vegetation is really different. Those juniper oak hillsides, although they are available to burn in some conditions, for much of the year they're moist and they're resilient and resistant to fire. But obviously, winter storms, droughts, that sort of thing, conditions are starting to change. The weather out there is getting weirder. So it's a little hard to see under the lights here, but 2011, 2012, that drought really stressed areas on the BCP, and we saw areas where we lost trees. We're looking right now down the barrel of potentially another drought of record, and vegetation, our natural ecosystems are stressed under those conditions. So that's something that we're studying and trying to understand the extent of that impact. And then, of course, you get, our winter storms that we had recently. And I think that's the most visible impact. I think, these are natural processes. Nature, there have been winter storms before. There will be winter storms again. And, so they have impacts, and they rearrange and, contribute to those different fuel loadings. But it's also, a natural process. A lot of those things that fell in those winter storms are already beginning to break down, to get to become habitat for our native species, and to, again, work those natural processes. So, as managers of all of this open space, like I said, 49,000 acres that we manage with 170 miles of boundary. Our biggest question is, how do we understand how those conditions are changing? And so right now, our program, we're working with the U.S. Forest Service, and we're actually bringing them out to redo that Baylor University study and look at the exact same locations that Baylor did to understand, okay, actually be able to quantify how those winter storms, drought impacts have changed the fuels on the landscape, so we can put hard numbers to it. We're also working with UT Austin. We're actually installing monitors so that we can measure the moisture content of juniper trees in real time, so we can understand how, as we get into a hot, dry summer, that is increasing our fire risk, and be able to quantify those changes. And then, I think it's easy as you drive by or you look out your window and you see those hillsides and you see some of that deadened down material, but being out on the landscapes, it's not consistent across all of our holdings. So we're trying to map and document and quantify where we have those highest areas of risk so that we can make sure that our limited resources are going to the most effective areas. We're working out on the edges, right? You've heard folks talk about your house, you and your neighbors, and your neighborhood, but we're working way out here on the edges. And so mostly what we're trying to do, we're trying to maintain a healthy and resilient natural system. We're trying to, if there is a wildfire and it's in the canopy, we're trying to create opportunities for it to drop out of the canopy and onto the ground where these fine folks can take care of it. Or we're trying to keep it from getting up into the canopy like Chief Bailey talked about. So it's hard to see here, but our primary strategy are shaded fuel breaks. We've, between us and the county, we've done 30 miles of shaded fuel break construction. And, this is a great picture of what that actually looks like on the ground. So we're trying to reduce those ladder fuels, that understory fuel loadings. The real challenge, though, is that what we saw in some places is that those shaded fuel breaks were actually more susceptible to those winter storm damage. As you can imagine, a lot of these trees grew up with all that supporting understory vegetation, and so when you removed it, they were weaker. And that ongoing maintenance is a challenge, too. Yeah, I said just on Austin Water property, we have 170 miles of boundary. So really trying to prioritize not just the creation of those shaded fuel breaks, which are, there's some discussion of cost. They're done on our contract a linear foot basis. And a lot of times, as some of these folks can talk about, you're fighting for every linear foot. It's hard work. And that maintenance activity is a key part of making them successful.
How many of you are surprised that that's what a shaded fuel break looks like? there's still plenty of vegetation. I've had lots of neighborhoods that were scared to death that I was going to clear cut their green space until I show this. There's still a forest there that you can enjoy that is much healthier than perhaps it was. But a photograph like that went a long way to explaining what a shaded field break, what our goal is to try to get there.
And that shade part is so important because with that shade in place, it's keeping, our native juniper, that juniper duff is so dense, it holds moisture so well that that's what helps that resilience, and resistance to fire to be there. And so, having that shade in place keeps that moisture in. It keeps grass and other, kind of brush from growing up in. That keeps makes it a lot harder. Makes it a lot harder for fire to move through that landscape. So, again, apologies for the light text here, but really moving forward, we've been focusing those shaded field breaks primarily where they're in close proximity to homes. We're also starting to move and look at where do fires start. Most fires are started by people. It is very rare around here to have naturally started fires, lightning strikes, that sort of thing. And so this map here, all the kind of fuzzy areas are wildfire starts, calls from AFD data. And so we're looking at some of those places to make sure that we put fuel mitigation resources there as well to give our, first responding partners the opportunity to get around a fire when it starts. Really, I talked about really continuing to understand and quantify that changing risk. That's a key piece. And really, trying to prioritize over our 170 miles of boundaries and the many, many more that the county manages. Where can we put those limited public resources so that they're most effectively minimizing and mitigating wildfire risk? And we'll go to the next slide. Really, we can't do it alone. We're working on the edges. We're trying to maintain healthy and resilient natural systems, but we need folks like yourself, folks like the partners that are here in this room, our university partners. It is a whole of community effort to improve our resistance and resiliency to wildfire. So we're all in it together, and we're doing our part to be good neighbors, and we look forward to working with you in that effort. And last thing I'll say, if you've never been out on a guided hike, a volunteer work day, a lot of the lands, we're managing them for conservation purposes, so there are not a lot of areas that are open to the public, but here I've got links to our websites where you can sign up for all sorts of public events. We love to get you and your neighbors out on our properties to enjoy these beautiful landscapes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right, we got a question right here.
One of your slides showed working with utilities. Can you talk specifically about working with, say, Austin Energy for vegetation clearing away from power lines or LCRA? There's evidence in California some numbers of fires were started by arcing wires and vegetation. I know in our part of Austin there's been very little vegetation clearing been done, so thank you.
So we work very closely with our utility partners as part of the BCP. We have a whole vegetation management process. So we around here, because of our endangered species, we have seasonality to that work. Austin Energy, PEC, LCRA, all of our providers are doing their own work to kind of prioritize that line clearing, but then we are working with them and facilitating that. So most of the time, they're coming to us with their plans. We're reviewing those. We're helping provide access. We are also sharing information. One of the things that we are working on right now is for our staffs, the BCP staff at city and county. Actually, we've just put together a shared data layer so that as our staff are out there in the field, we can identify and collect data on any of those places where we've got a tree hanging on a line or a conglomeration of vegetation, dead and down material under that line. So we worked very closely with them trying to get that information up and to facilitate their access to come in and to clear those lines.
And then I just wanted to add really quickly, my name is Jeremy Hull, Travis County Assistant Director of Natural Resources for Travis County, so I'm Justin on the Travis County side that he's been speaking about. In addition to what he said with working with utilities, we are also working with them to decommission and remove lines from interior portions of the BCP and getting them onto the exteriors so that they are easier to maintain and less likely to cause those, vegetation arcing things. And we've done that a lot with LCRA, Austin Energy, Barnellis, others.
Right here in front. Oh, we were going to this lady. She hadn't asked a question yet. It's dark. It's dark up here.
I was recently introduced to the Texas Youth Works, and they have a crew that's trained in wildfire mitigation practices for clearing for shaded fuel breaks. Have you used their services? Because it's be great to help the youth and also help our neighbors.
Yeah, we have. We have worked closely in City of Austin. We have an Austin Civilian Conservation Corps crew, so we've used those. We've worked with American Youth Works and Texas Conservation Corps. Actually, we have some of them out on our Hays County properties, I think, this week. So they're a great resource. Really, for us, it's all of the above. We've got contracted crews. We're doing work ourselves with our staff, and then finding other ways to engage with whatever resources are out there.
And one other thing, I live in Jester, and some of my neighbors, I'm the Firewise coordinator for the neighborhood, so a lot of my neighbors on BCP, they were willing to pay the city to clear, and they still will not do that. I don't understand that, why they won't. That's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and I think, resources are something where it is expensive work. And so, we've been lucky on the city side where, annually we have $350,000 to $400,000 that we're putting into this work. I think one of the biggest challenges for us is managing that work across the landscape, because when it is done poorly, it can actually increase wildfire risk. When people get a little overzealous with those chainsaws, we talked about the importance of that shaded fuel break. It can open up the canopy, which is bad for the species that we're managing for, but also bad from a fire risk perspective. So our biggest challenge is just continuing to build the capacity to do more projects in more places.
One thing that I want to add for that. So all of these things work in concert together. So from the home hardening to the shaded fuel breaks to everything works together. And for shaded fuel breaks and other mitigation efforts to be effective, they have to be very big. So if we have one or two homeowners that are willing to do right behind their house, we need to do the whole thing. And so not all the time, all the neighbors could do that. And so it's not economical.
I'll just say one other thing that we see is a lot of times folks are looking, they saw the next street over got a shaded fuel break treatment right next to their house. But we are evaluating those. We really prioritize those places where our boundary is within that 30 feet of a home. Because if we're working 150 feet from your home on our side of the property, we're working on the wrong side of the decimal point. And so we are really intentional as stewards of public funds to put those treatments where they're going to be most effective, where we can maintain them over time, where they're going to not create other negative impacts.
So I had a question on we had that cost per acre earlier. You were talking about cost per linear foot. Is that for like a 30-foot setback of shaded fuel break? And what would you expect kind of as a cost per linear on that?
I can't remember off the top of my head what the cost is, but I can get back to you.
Cool.
We actually just approved a contract this morning at
Awesome.
Austin City Council. So
Awesome. Thank you.
You're good.
We have a property that's a common area that borders the BCP. There's a 5 out of 5 risk assessment down in the canyon that runs right up to that area and into our green belt. I've been asking for 2-3 years for the BCP to mark their boundary on the other side of that green belt, and I haven't been able to get anybody to do that. We had some volunteers that would volunteer to take out the dead stuff, but nobody wants to go in there because you can't cut in the BCP, and the BCP has not put their boundaries in it, and it's on a cliffside that it goes down, so it's difficult work. But how can we get someone to mark the boundary? You have boundaries up there, but no one is.
I'll connect with you, and we'll figure out whether it's our property or county property. And
Yeah, it's
and
in
we can-
BCP next to the center that they're building.
Okay.
On
Yeah.
on Wilson Boulevard there off of 620.
That's ours.
That's good.
So you were talking about the shaded fuel break needs to be behind multiple homes. So you may not be able to answer this, but how beneficial is it to do, like in our neighborhood in River Place, occasionally some homeowner will want to do something behind their property, so but they're like the only one. So how beneficial is that really?
I'm gonna.
Okay, well, so let's understand, and as you had mentioned before, it's a cohesive strategy. It's the three-legged stool. One, what we can do to harden our homes, create that adapted community. Second, the fire resilient landscape, which is what the BCP is doing. Third is effective firefighting. All three work together in concert, and not one can do the place of the other. So, 90% of homes that catch fire from a wildfire are from embers. Embers can fly 1.5 miles from their origin. So, shaded fuel break is not going to clear 1.5 miles away from your home and prevent all those embers, right? However, if you get that structural ignition zone evaluation, if you take responsibility for making your home harder, now you've significantly reduced the chances of your home catching fire from a wildfire. Conversely, if you've got brush and trees right up on your location, well, that's a problem too. So it works together. Also, providing that defensible space allows the firefighters to come in and put fires out while they're still small. Once the fire gets up into the canopy, it creates a fire length greater than 8 feet long. Our hand lines won't put it out. So we've got to be able to reduce the fire load, have a defensible space around your homes, and be properly trained to fight those fires when they're small. Does that kind of give a overall concept of what we're all trying to get done here?
We're bringing you a mic to the guy in the middle.
I think one of the things we were talking about the embers and the 1.5 miles, and that was L.A. The Santa Anita winds really blew those embers all over the place. And part of the thing that people don't understand sometimes about that catastrophe was also the effect that it had on public water. There was no water for like 60 days in some of those areas because those embers got into their watered areas. And of course, our water is Lake Travis. And so anything that happens around Lake Travis that would be that catastrophic, who knows how long it would be before we had water again. So again, it's really important that we take a look at what they're doing. I'm also going to mention that somebody said they were from River Place. How many other HOAs are here or communities are here? I don't know. Has anybody ever done a community evacuation? I know River Place. I talked to John, I believe it was, in order to do an evacuation. I'm on Comanche Trail about 5 years, 6, 7 years ago now maybe. We had one person who said, well, maybe we should do a community fire drill. We're on Comanche Trail. The reserve is right behind us. Preserve is right behind us, et cetera, et cetera. And it was Bridget Shea, Commissioner Shea, who really took the leadership role with us. Any roadblocks we had, she knocked them out of the way. But it was the police department. It was Lake Travis Fire Department. It was Dustin. We had a whole conglomeration of the public people who helped put this thing on. And of course, it's very difficult. It takes a lot of people to do this. It took us the first time about a year to put it together. The second time we did it, which was about 4 years ago, it took us about 6 months. And then I just did a refresher for everybody about 3 months ago at our HOA. But if anybody has any opportunity to do it, River Place was talking about it. Of course, we have 250 homes. I forgot how many they had. They had a whole bunch. Yeah, and I said, well, maybe we just do it in sections over there. And Bobby Abbott was talking about that too, is just doing a domino theory, showing them how to evacuate. But I think that's very important as well.
Question?
Evacuation drills are, in a way not helpful because, okay, you didn't say not helpful, I'm putting words in your mouth, but basically about how the evacuation, could take different forms because you don't know which way that the fire is going to be. So, for example, if it's coming from the east and people have practiced, evacuating that direction. So could you address that?
Yes. I think I'll make your point for you, which is evacuation is very complicated. It's not the same any two times because of all of the factors that go into it. Know that the HESM and the different organizations are working to get that overarching evacuation planning in place. But what's more or is as important is the other two layers. First off, in your own home, get your ready, set, go guides in the back. It has a list of the things that you can pre-plan before you have to actually evacuate, making sure you have a plan for your pets, things like that. So taking care of your personal responsibilities. Second, as communities and HOAs and POAs, having some level of grassroots understanding of routes, having places that might be considered a safe refuge area, as well as just knowing your neighbors. If there's going to be somebody that might need extra help to get out, do that. And then to move into that big overarching, very complex problem of evacuation.
Chris, if I could, I'd like to speak to that for a second. If you can go to the last slide. Something that kind of helps put this conversation in perspective. In Travis County, of the 1,000 square miles, a third of it, 32%, is in the city. The rest of it's out in the county. There's 20 different villages and cities. There's 14, arguably, fire departments, hopefully acting as one. There's 3 different EMS sections. There's 7 different OEMs, Office of Emergency Management. There's 17 police departments. There's 10 street and bridge departments. Every one of these agencies is working on evacuation, trying to come up with the right plan. But it shows how incredibly difficult it is to give you one plan. There's just an awful lot of variables that go into it. All right. So a lot of clamoring is for, man, I want my evacuation plan. And as Chris said, it really is local to you and your efforts and your POA specific to that, just because of the tremendous variety of the agencies that are working on it. That makes sense? Coordinated correctly? Yes, ma'am. I think you should. That's what that helped with. That's what it was.
All right, thank you very much. Bridget's going to mention a few things about resources in just a minute to help.
One last comment. Chief Abbott, did you have some comment to make? Chief Abbott's with ESD 6, Lakeway Fire Department.
Lake Travis. So just one thing about just one thing about the evacuation drills. They are extremely labor intensive for everybody involved. And with technology today, there are other avenues that we can garner some of that. For large communities, I would say we use simulation and we use other tools that are there for large communities. For smaller communities, it's worked. But it is extremely intensive and logistically challenging and takes a very long time to prepare for it. The mention of a year to prepare for it is not an exaggeration. It was every bit of a year. So there's other tools that everybody in this room has access to simulate evacuations. And to do that, we contact one of the fire departments and we can start setting that up. They've had good success, and we want to honor that and appreciate everybody who's put the time and effort into it. But for very large communities, it would be very taxing. And I was also mentioned, we talk about evacuation, but as everything was mentioned here tonight, home hardening and sheltering in place is as important. We want to keep you in your homes and keep you safe. That's our ideal mission. If we have to evacuate, it's the last thing we would want to have to do. But home hardening, as we've talked about tonight, is key. I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you.
Justin has a comment, and then we're going to ask Bridget to make a comment.
A lot of folks were asking about the specific cost of fuels mitigation. With our fuels mitigation team, which again operates at cost, so this could probably be kind of a floor of how much it's going to cost, is roughly $12,000 per acre.
One of the things that we worked on at Travis County was to improve our emergency notification system. How many of you have gotten alerts on your phones in the last couple of years? Boil water notice, freeze, heat, whatever. Part of the reason you're getting those notices is because we helped upgrade with CapCog from a landline-based system. I mean, young people have literally no idea what I'm talking about when I say landline. And it was the landline-based, and they transitioned it to mobile phone-based. And it increased the reach from 7% to over 70% and growing. So if you haven't yet signed up for Warren Central Texas, do that, because you can pick how you want to be notified. Do you want to get a text? Do you want to get a phone call? Do you want to get an email? But if you haven't yet signed up, do, because this is literally the first warning it's in the category of a run for your life. You're not going to get a bake sale warning on this. This is all stuff that's really emergency related. And then the other quick thing I want to say, on the back of the tables and up here is a QR code that'll take you to a wildfire resource page. My staff person, Zara Stanfield, put it together. It's a kind of one-stop shop for a lot of the information we talked about tonight. If you can't remember, how do I find my ESD? It's all here. You got to scroll, but there's a lot of information here. So if you just use your camera and grab the QR code, it'll take you to a resource page with lots and lots of this information on it that we've talked about tonight.
Thank you, Bridget. I want to thank each of you for coming. I wanted to recognize that Senator Donna Campbell's Community Legislative Director is here. Joyce, will you wave your hand right here? And one of our volunteer commissioners from ESD 6, Larry Sarton, is in the back. If you want to know what it's like to volunteer, you can talk to Larry. It is so important that you get to know your neighbors. Some of you are on big lots, some of you are on little lots. It matters in an emergency if you might be the one who needs help or you might be the one who's going to give the help. And so get to know your neighbors. Thank you again for coming out tonight. And there's some information and some treats around the room, so you don't have to rush off. Thank you.